So since my talk is on shaping dominant narratives, I'd first of all like you, I'm sure everyone already knows this, but it's very important to touch upon these themes, what really shapes the narratives that we talk about. You know, what are we reading about on the internet? Who are we talking about? Who gets to access this material? Who are the ones producing this knowledge? And what shapes it? First of all, gender. The construction of these binaries, you know, this dualism that we've created, that the masculinity and the femininity, that women are supposed to be subservient, they're supposed to stay quiet, they're supposed to be, you know, they are more inferior as compared to men. Whereas men are more boisterous, they're more vocal, men deserve to talk, men deserve to be heard. This creates a lot of socio-cultural traditions. It creates a lot of, you know, gender-based expectations and norms that you're supposed to follow. Because I belong to this particular gender and I'm not supposed to speak, so maybe my voice is not really that important. And power dynamics. So this power plays in not only a very overt way, in the sense that it's not always external in nature, but it can also be very internal. It can also be covert. Power, when we talk about it, and I'll speak about it in much greater detail later, can be both vertical, say an upper caste man and a lower caste woman, but it can also be horizontal. I belong to a certain class or a caste, and I'm exerting this sort of power against someone who is also the same category as me. And last of all, which is something I feel is very dangerous, which is the belief and the perception that there exists only one singular reality, which is my truth. So, I knew I was like that when I was in school. I knew that Chandigarh is my truth, and this is how things have always been. This is how the world is. And I used to see the world through rose-tinted glasses. And I used to feel, oh, if I stay like this, everyone else also obviously stays like this, and I don't really know what's going on. You become extremely insular. You refuse to believe that there's a universe beyond you. And there are so many different kinds of lives and histories and traditions that people are living and you know, inhibiting. And thereby, it's very important to acknowledge the existence of multiple realities. Now, I'd like to complement this with an example. So, in December of 2024, my research team, we were awarded a research grant by UNFPA, which is the United Nations Population Fund, MIT Solve, and IE University. Now, the brief of this research study was to look at climate change vis-a-vis sexual reproductive health and how both things correlate with one another. So we had chosen this one particular district called Chhindwara, which lies in southern Madhya Pradesh, which is bordering Maharashtra. And now in Chhindwara, there are the Gond tribes and the Korku tribes. And we'd also chosen another particular area called Patalkot. Now, I'm sure most people haven't even heard of Patalkot. I know I hadn't heard of it, and the name itself sounded really, eerie to me when I first came across it. And in Patalkot, which is this, the picture that you can see in front of you. So Patalkot is this. As you can see, there's this huge hill, and there's a lot of forest cover. So this is the Satpura range in southern Madhya Pradesh. And Patalkot is home to only the Bharia tribe. Now, the Bharia tribe is a particularly vulnerable tribal group, as has been characterized by the government of India. Now, what that means is that these tribes do not have access to basic facilities also. But as soon as I went there, I met some of the most brilliant people, brilliant women, men, children that I've ever had the privilege of meeting in my last, ever since I've been working. So in the midst of all this, who is really getting silenced? There's this very key theoretical framework that I'd studied in TIS, which is called epistemic violence. Now, it's by this post-colonial scholar called Gayatri Spivak. This was released in 1988 in one of her seminal essays called Can the Subaltern Speak? Now, the subaltern, like I've written there, the global south, the subaltern is also a term used for the global south, for the third world nations, nations which are not as developed as the developed nations, right? And so, in this particular essay, she challenges the notion that the very concept of knowledge production is extremely biased. Because in the midst of this knowledge production, there are so many others who are being left out. It's only one specific elite, maybe male, maybe white category of people who are producing this knowledge. And what about the people who, the knowledge is being produced about? Say, for example, the people in Patalkot was written in English, and they do not speak English. They speak their tribal dialect, and they speak Hindi. So are they even being able to access what's being written about them? So she speaks about how this very concept, this epistemic violence, is so dangerous to humanity itself because you're stealing something from someone. It's intellectual theft, which is the worst thing you can do to somebody. People are losing out on their language, on their history, on their culture, on their indigenous tradition, just because you refuse to believe that there are other people who can exist. So, in the midst of all this, the people who get silenced are the global south. Very power structures that were used against us so many years ago, we're now using against each other again, like against our own countrymen. And the double marginalization that gender, faces is the worst because, say, an upper caste woman is not as underprivileged as a tribal woman or a Dalit lady, because they're facing that double marginalization of being both a tribal and a woman. So using the Panopticon, I will again explain to you how knowledge is time and again, it's contested, how, people are silenced, people are further pushed to the periphery, so much so that they begin internalizing it. So as you can see through this diagram, the Panopticon is a circular prison. Okay, it's a circular prison which has cells on either side. It has cells on either side, and every cell has one particular inmate, only one inmate. And in the middle of this prison is this huge watchtower. There's this huge watchtower with, regardless of whether there's a guard in it or not, a prison guard, there is this red beam, there's a red light which keeps going round and round and touches every single cell. So at any given point in time, the light is entering a person's cell. So, even if, I as an inmate, even if I know that there's not a person standing in front of the watchtower, standing at the watchtower looking at me, I know that the light is constantly coming, and at any time, they can see me and they can see what I'm up to and what I'm doing. So this leads to the process and the thought of that I'm constantly being watched. I'm constantly being surveyed. And then what I start doing is I start behaving in the manner that others want me to. The same thing we expect when it comes to gender, when it comes to caste, that, oh, okay, there are men sitting over there, so I'll become smaller and I'll shrink myself. And I might have some opinions, but I won't really say it out loud because what if the other person feels bad? The gender becomes a performance. It's something that we keep doing, and caste also, class also, that, we've already internalized it, so no matter what anyone says, it's very difficult to get out of that. So there was this one time when I had gone to Tikamgarh, which is a district in Madhya Pradesh, for a particular interview and focus group discussion on the impact of reverse male migration during the COVID pandemic. Okay? So there was this woman I spoke to over there. Now, I knew that this woman was working because our baseline data told me that this woman, she is occupied and she has an occupation. So what I did was I went up to her and I asked her, I had this one-on-one interview with her, and I asked her that, what is it that you do? This woman looked at me and she said, I don't do anything. And she made such a face when she said that. And then, of course, I knew that she's working somewhere, so I pushed a little further and I said, tell me what you do. Didi, just tell me what you do. And then she said, I'm a school teacher, bas time pass hai. It's just time pass. And previously, this woman also worked as a tailor. She used to stitch clothes for a living, which, I don't know stitching, which is something that's, it is a skill. It's not an unskilled form of labor, and neither is teaching. And this woman who wakes up at the crack of dawn and is fending for her entire family, she's feeding her children, looking after the elderly, sending her husband off to work at 10 a.m., going to the village school, earning 2,000 rupees per month, is telling me that she does nothing. That is how internalized it is, that what I do, what I am, has no value in this world. Another thing. So there was this another interview again in Tikamgarh. Just recently, in March of this year, I had gone. We were studying about water insecurity and how women, whether they're even allowed to participate in these water governance meetings, these formalized meetings. So I was having this focus group discussion with just women. Now this discussion, the setting of it in itself, there was this huge podium, like this, there was a podium, and there were just men sitting on that podium, and I went to the women, and they're elderly women as well, they're like in their 50s and 60s. I'm telling them that let's all sit over here, we'll put something on the floor, we'll all sit on it, and the women are refusing to sit there. They're saying, no, let's sit over here, and we're sitting on the road. And the men are sitting on this elevated podium, and we're all sitting on the road, without any dari also under us. But that's not the point. The point is, so I began with this focus group discussion, which is with 5 to 6 women. We're all sitting on the floor, and I'm speaking to them, and I'm saying, Didi, do you participate in these, water governance meetings? Can you tell me if you've ever participated in one? What really happens? Can you walk me through the process? Now, I was, just about to finish my sentence when this man comes, and he's around 40 years old. He comes and he butts in, okay? And he tells me, why are you asking them? He says, why are you wasting your time in asking them? They're not educated. They're not informed at all. You ask me, you ask us. And I had to tell him that, just let me do my job and you can do yours. And then, but what happened was the conversation just shifted. The man left, but the women became so scared. The women once again started speaking in the same way that, oh, hame to kuch nahi aata. हमसे क्यों पूछ रहे हो? उनसे पूछो ना. Why are you asking us in the first place? So this is how dangerous. The very fact that someone is deciding on your behalf that, oh, this one does not know anything. Most recently, I went to Chhattisgarh. I went to Chhattisgarh in, early this month only. And there was another interview that I was taking with this woman. This was on local governance if women are part of, these Panchayati Raj institutions. If women are part of, in the sense that if they're, positioned as the ward member or the sarpanch. Now, I'm speaking to this one lady. She's educated till class 9, okay, which is great. And she tells me that, oh, I don't go because they're only men. The setting, it's only men in the Gram Sabha meeting, so I feel very hesitant. I don't like to go. And then, right after that interview, I had an interview with another man, okay? This man is telling me, I asked him, and he was well acquainted with that lady who had spoken to previously. And I asked him that why is it that, women don't attend or women don't go? And I gave him this woman's example also that, Didi was telling me that she doesn't go for these meetings. And he replied saying, okay, she's not that educated. She doesn't know what to do. Now, this lady was 9th pass. I asked the man, how much have you studied till? And he said, I'm 4th fail. And in my mind, I had so many words that I wanted to say to him. But at that point, of course, it wasn't right, and I couldn't have said anything. So I just chose to stay quiet. But I'm sure you all can understand it is such great disservice to the fact that just because you're a woman, or just because you're a tribal, or you're a Dalit, you do not get to voice yourself. And then there's another thing that really happens. There are some women, some women have internalized it so much that they're just scared. That they come to me and they say, please don't interview us, interview them instead. In Karauli, which is in Rajasthan, these Meena tribal women, they tell me that, ma'am, we want to speak up. We want to talk about, what we know whatever's wrong, whatever's going wrong in our lives, we know what we want, but we don't have the mechanisms to do so. We don't know which way to go. We don't have the resources, so how do we do it? It's not like we don't have a voice. Another case, women tell me that we want to go, we want to sit in these very meetings that men sit and they decide which crop will be produced, how much will be produced, how will we sell these crops, where will we go. But we lack the language to do so. Now, by language, of course, they don't mean Hindi. They all speak in Hindi, they speak in Bundeli, in Gondi, whichever language. But they are talking about the technical jargon, the technical knowledge that the men may or may not be speaking in. Even if they're not, the women are already so apprehensive. They're saying we cannot go to these meetings. The worst of all, what I feel, is I've had men and women alike, and children, come up to me and tell me that hum dehati hai, which is we're illiterate. They come up to me and they say hum jangli hai, we're wild, we're animal-like, and hame kuch sikha do. Teach us something. And I'm, it's, who am I to teach you anything? When I've come here and I'm so much younger than you, why are you according so much respect to me? Which brings me to how important one's positionality is, especially in a field like research, and not just research, but in everything that we do, any sort of occupation, be it you're an educator, or you're a doctor, or you're a lawyer, you must understand your positionality in relation to the other person. So why are we getting this respect? Because we come from metropolitan cities, because we've been born in a certain place, because we speak in English, and they clearly do not. They do not have the right to. Just because they've been born where they've been born, they live in extremely geographically remote areas, and we ourselves have pushed them further into the peripheries, and we go and behave like, oh, we have access to their information and their knowledge. So that's what's very important, to understand your own social location, that I come from privilege. And it's very important to bridge this gap. There is this particular toolkit, which is called Participatory Feminist Action Research, which is, of course, very centered just to research. But I'd like to talk to you about the basic principle of it, which we all can apply, in our entire lives we can apply, in any sphere of life. So what this does, as the name itself suggests, is that research stops being a one-sided process, right? It becomes a participatory process wherein it's a co-lived experience. Whereas, as compared to otherwise, where it becomes very extractionist. So it's no longer me, the researcher, you, the subject, or you, the educator, and you, the students, or someone a nurse and someone a doctor, but it becomes a co-created experience that, I'll tell you a little bit of my experience based on my particular positionality and my social location, and you coming with so much wisdom, with so much indigenous knowledge, And so, which is why I feel it's very important that the very concept of knowledge production should not come from those at the very top. It should not be a top-to-bottom approach, but rather a bottom-up approach. People in round-table discussions sitting in AC rooms cannot decide and discuss on the climate crisis. Who are we to discuss on the climate crisis? We're increasing the carbon emissions outside by, switching on so many ACs at once. So it's really important for people who are actually going through it to bring their lived experiences in the forefront. And thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.